In this episode, we share our thoughts on Alaska and our final cost. Be sure to stay with us till the end as we share why we had to come home early. We are Never Enough Sunsets. Here are our top 5 areas that we visited. From Waterton to Jasper National Park, the views were just spectacular. From the mountains to the glacial water and to going to the Columbia ice field, we couldn't have asked for better weather, and this is definitely a do-over as Canada did not disappoint. Next on our list was the Russian River. This was actually a surprise. We had no idea how beautiful this area was. You could watch the salmon jumping upstream, the anglers, and this is where we saw our first black bears. Next on our stops was the Homer Spit. Homer was convenient to everything. We went to the Salty Dog Saloon. We spent some time eating our way through the town, having halibut and chips, and the beautiful scenery down by the boats. Probably my favorite place was Seward, Alaska. We went to the Alaska Sea Life Center, but probably the highlight of the entire trip was touring on the Major Marine boat. This was an 8-hour trip to see all sorts of sea life, especially the orca whales. Highly recommend this as a stop and this tour. Last but not least on our top 5 was Valdez, Alaska. This was another opportunity to take a wildlife cruise with Captain Fred on the Lulu Belle. It was also just as wonderful, but a smaller boat so we could get up close and personal with all of the animals. In addition, we went to the salmon hatchery, and this was a day that we could have spent all day just watching the salmon and watching the sea lions having a feast. Valdez has to be a must on your stops in Alaska. Next, let's talk about the best and worst drives. Number 1 on our list was the Icefields Parkway. This is a beautiful drive and a must-do for any Alaska traveler. Next was the Keystone Canyon on your way to Valdez. Waterfalls, waterfalls, waterfalls. A must-do for any first-time traveler is the Top of the World Highway. The views were just amazing. Lastly, our favorite drive was around Muncho Lake. Around every corner was a wow with glacial waters and with mountains. But probably our favorite part was the number of animals we saw along the highway. We saw bison, we saw mountain sheep, we saw moose, and we saw lots of bear. Definitely a wonderful drive. Not going to spend too much time on the worst drives because it changes every year. But from Tok to Beaver Creek and then north of Dawson City was just awful. Next is our favorite campsites. Number 1 on the list is the Waterton Town Site. This was one of our favorites just because of the location. We were downtown in the national park. There was wildlife everywhere, great hiking, and conveniently located. Definitely worth the stop. At number 2 was Muncho Lake. We actually boondocked on the side of the road. Next is Deep Creek Ninilchak. Sometimes it's about the views, and these were wonderful right on the water. But sometimes it's about the company you keep. We met a wonderful family that was full-time, and we enjoyed our time spent with them. Next is Marathon Campground in Seward. Location, location, location. This was close to everything. We could walk everywhere we needed to go, and this was made for camping. Next on our list was Congdon Creek Campground. This was highly recommended due to the beautiful crystal clear lake and also the local hiking. This is definitely a place that we will come back to. Last but not least was Lake Kathleen Campground in the Kluane National Park. This is a beautiful campground with lots of great hikes, and it also is where we saw our first grizzly bear. So let's talk about lessons learned. Number 1 was the milestone. This was an invaluable resource. I found myself keeping it in the front seat and referring to it all along our trip. Number 2 was the iOverlander app. This is the only app that we could use without any cell service. It also provides you an opportunity to see where you can get gas, propane, dump. It was one of the best uses of apps that we've ever had. Our only regret is that we did not get to spend enough time in Denali. We don't make reservations and they were full. So that's on our agenda for our next trip in 25. Last but not least, next time we would take a tow vehicle. We found that traveling in the Class C was much more comfortable than our truck camper, but it did limit some of the places that we could go and see. So what did it cost us? Fuel was the most expensive, with groceries being second. I don't know if you can count groceries though, because we were going to eat anyway. Our next biggest expense was camping. Typically we boondock, but we didn't on this trip because we didn't have a toad. Number 4 and number 5 on our list of highest expenses were excursions and going out to eat. So what were our total costs for 10 weeks? $13,390. But I tell you, it was the trip of a lifetime, and we can't wait to go back. But our trip would come to an abrupt end as Hurricane Idalia was barreling toward our home. She landed about 15 miles north of where we live with a 12-foot storm surge. We're from Florida, and that means that we're going home. Our home might be okay, and it was, but our neighbors were not. So our trip ended, but Steinhatchee is strong, and we're rebuilding. We're going back to Alaska, but as you can see, it was devastating what it did to our town. Our journey to Alaska ends, but this is only the beginning of sunshine and fun in Florida. Continue to follow us at Never Enough Sunsets.